Water. Earth. Fire. Air. Long ago, the four nations lived together in harmony. Then, everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked. Only the Avatar, master of all four elements, could stop them. But when the world needed him most, he vanished. 100 years passed and my brother and I discovered the new Avatar, an airbender named Aang. And although his airbending skills are great, he has a lot to learn before he's ready to save anyone. But I believe Aang can save the world.
Hey there again, welcome back to the Avatar Vlogs. This is episode 15, Bato of the Water Tribe. And thankfully this episode is much better than the last one, but it is kind of with the caveat that there's one moment in this episode that really prevents it from being all that good. And we'll get to it in a minute, but for right now, Team Avatar recently having come off the events of the Fortune Teller, they're moving along. When all of a sudden they come across a man named Bato, who it turns out was one of the, not the elders, but he was one of the men from the Southern Water Tribe who went off to the Earth Kingdom to help combat the Fire Nation. And he comes across Sokka and Katara, who are not only happy to see him, but they're kind of happy to get any semblance of home and any potential news that they might be able to see their father again. So Bato, it turns out, was injured during a raid, and he got burned on like one side of his body. And he was taken to an abbey where the nuns there, which not in a Christianity type of sense, but yeah, there's abbeys and there's nuns in the world of Avatar. Go figure. So it turns out that Bato has been being healed by the nuns. His burns have been tended to, and they've set him up in a little tent that has relics from the Southern Water Tribe. So while he's away from his crew, his troop, his tribe, I don't really know how they describe it, he can feel like home. Now, of course, Sokka and Katara are more than happy to experience this, but Aang, on the other hand, being an air nomad, he's not exactly feeling at home with this kind of culture. He's feeling very left out, and on top of that, because Katara and Sokka are so wanting to see their father, Aang is worried that they're going to find him and split up with him, so he becomes a little bit of a recluse, and this is where the episode kind of gets a little bad for some people. A message is delivered, which Aang intercepts, showing the location of where Hakoda is going to be, and he crumples it up. He hides it, and he is totally okay with not telling Katara and Sokka about where their dad is. We'll depart from that dick move for a second, and meanwhile, Zuko and Iroh, they come across a woman named June, who it turns out she's a bit of a bounty hunter, and she's a very good bounty hunter. She does this because she has a creature known as a shearshoe, which, while blind, it has an incredible sense of smell, and it can track almost anybody anywhere. So Zuko decides, I'm going to utilize her skills, and they use it with the necklace that Zuko's been holding on to for the last 9 episodes to track Katara, because where Katara is, Aang and the Avatar is, and Zuko's going to, in theory, finally track them down and bring them to his father. So Zuko and Iroh are on the hunt for the Avatar, and they come across a few locations from the Blue Spirit and the Fortune Teller. The only reason the Fortune Teller exists is to make that one reference. Excuse me, though it was kind of funny seeing the herbalist again from episode 13, and she says to her cat, Miyuki, have you been in trouble with the Fire Nation again? Like the cat somehow does this all the time. So Zuko's on the hunt, and Aang fights with himself as to whether or not to reveal this to Katara and Sokka, and how the group dynamic is going to change from there. Okay, so admittedly, this episode is one that's not talked about a ton among people, kind of like the Fortune Teller. It's not really described as one of the best. It's not really described as one of the worst. It's just kind of so in the middle that it doesn't really get a lot of attention other than just kind of the filling in the runtime. But there was a list that came out not too long ago that someone did a top 11 worst Avatar The Last Airbender episodes, and this one actually appeared on number 2 for one very specific reason, and to me that is the reason why this episode is kind of undermining itself. It's It's the one thing where this whole episode is kind of brought down by, and it's a one lazy, contrived, out of character moment, and that is Aang hiding the letter from Katara and Sokka. Now, on one hand, I get where he's coming from, because he probably is worried that these two people who he's very close to are thinking of leaving him to go seek out their father and maybe effectively overturning the mission and putting the sake of everything at world. But more or less, Aang just doesn't want to be alone, which I get, but the problem is that it's these characters we're talking about. Like, this is Aang we're talking about. Like, the guy who will completely go out of his way to help people. He'll go out of his way to do the right thing, come up with a smart solution, and the fact that this episode just so cheapens it, like he just throws the envelope away because he's worried that Katara and Sokka are going to leave him, which really feels like that's a moment in writing that feels like it doesn't have faith in its own characters. And I know that's a weird thing to say, but to think that Katara and Sokka would leave Aang for this reason, like they might want to stop by, but they're not just going to abandon Aang either. And they say that several times that they're not going to abandon him. In the episode they do, but that's only because after they found out that he hid the letter, they're like, what the hell? What'd you do that for? And it's just kind of a moment. It's hard to explain here, but it was just such an out of character and uncomfortable, and just, it didn't feel right. Like, do you ever watch shows where characters will sometimes do things where it's kind of in service of bad writing, and you're just like, they wouldn't do this. And I know it's kind of arrogant to presume to know the intention of a human being, but when you have characters so well established and so well defined, and you have them do things that just don't feel right, it doesn't feel right. It feels out of focus, out of character. And that's the moment that to me kind of keeps this episode from being truly great. In a way, it's kind of like not the Great Divide. I don't remember which episode I said it in, but this is one of those episodes that has a lame setup, but a pretty decent payoff. I will say that. Everything in the first 2/3 is kind of lame. It's the same stuff about someone being a third wheel and worried if his friends are going to stick with him to the end, and how there's the liar revealed. It's like, man, I know this episode came out in 2006, but sometimes these cliches and these tropes, they were never good. And when they're so utilized just for the sake of lazy writing, they just feel they just feel insultingly cheap. And I really do hate this about this episode. With that said, this episode does have a decent amount going for it. For example, I really like the guest stars they got for the voice acting in this episode. I don't remember the guy who played Bato. I can't remember his name, but he's a bit of a bit actor, but he's got a really cool, distinct voice. I can't quite replicate it here, but it's a very cool, distinct voice. It's kind of like, it's almost like a radio drama voice you'd hear. Like, it's really cool. Amy Hill, she's an actor you probably recognize. If you've seen 51st Dates, she was Lucy the diner owner in that movie. If you've seen the Lilo and Stitch remake, she's kind of the next door neighbor character. She's kind of a Hawaiian Filipino looking woman. I know that's not a great way to describe her, but I didn't even know her name was Amy Hill until I did the research for this episode. But, she doesn't have a lot in this episode. I think she only has like 5 lines, but she does make them count. It was kind of, I remember hearing her, I thought, I know that voice. It's a good voice. And I saw it was Amy Hill, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. But the real one for me, though, is I think this is the first appearance, and it's one of the only appearances, I think, of Jennifer Hale in this show. Now, if you don't know who that voice is, she's best known as the modern voice of Cinderella in anything Disney related. She took over from, I don't know the previous actor's name, but she took over for her. And she's done a lot of other voice acting. She's done a ton of stuff. I know her best, of course, as Cinderella. And she was one of Ariel's sisters in like the Little Mermaid spin-off movies. So yeah, but I remember hearing June's voice, and I was thinking, I know that voice, because Jennifer Hale does have a very clear, nice voice, but it's not super distinctive. It's not like you could put her in a lineup and instantly pick her out. But I was thinking, I know that voice, and then I saw the guest credits. I'm like, oh, it's Jennifer Hale. That's really cool. So yeah, I think to almost nobody else is that going to be a neat thing, but to me, it was there's really cool Jennifer Hale's in this episode. And speaking of that, the good part of this episode is the climax when Iroh, Zuko, June, they track down the Avatar. So Katara, Sokka, and Aang split up, and June goes after both of these groups. Aang returns, save the day as he usually does, and the fight at the Abbey is actually pretty good. It's actually a pretty good fight. I can't say it's one of the best, but it's a good combination of Zuko's 1-versus-1 fight with Aang and the Shearshu trying to take down Aang, and all these various characters trying to help one another, which is made difficult because the Shearshu has saliva that will paralyze anything. Even our good boy Appa, who puts up a fair fight, ends up getting taken down by the Shearshu. So it's actually the whole episode is kind of worth it for the last third, in which the climactic battle takes place. So yeah, this is another episode that has kind of a weak setup, but a very good payoff. But yeah, you have to sit through a lot of really lame setup to get there. It's not as bad as some other episodes, but that is the one moment I really felt that they kind of totally misjudged Aang's character, and it felt way out of place. Is there anything? There's two other things I guess kind of worth mentioning. So this episode, Katara finally gets her necklace back, which she lost back in episode 6. And, Zuko's constantly been holding on to it and sort of tormenting her with it. She finally gets it back, and she gives Aang a little peck on the cheek for it. That was kind of a cute moment. It was sort of, even though I don't like the Aang and Katara relationship, seeing him be all like, when he got kissed was kind of cute. That was not a good representation, by the way. I know that was creepy, but on Aang, it looks cute. Also, I remember people talking about this episode and saying how it doesn't hold up especially well because of how Iroh is acting. And when I read that, I kind of thought, okay, whatever. It's people reading way too deep into something. But in this episode, Iroh is kind of... There's really no other way to describe it. He's kind of thirsting for June, which I can't blame him. She is a very attractive lady, but it comes off very much like that guy, a guy friend you have who's totally trying to score by, being jovial and laughing and being super supportive. And it just kind of comes off as awkward. Like, dude, why are you doing this? And I'm not saying that Iroh can't have a crush, but it really just felt kind of off seeing him basically try and hit on June half the time. It's like in that episode of Game of Thrones when Davos was hitting on the one servant woman. That just felt a little wrong. Maybe don't do that. But otherwise, this was an okay episode. It's not one of the best ones, but it was okay. It's kind of worth it for a good fight and some good voice acting. But other than that, it's one. I'm sorry again it took so long to get these videos going again, but I really hope to catch up both for, I don't know, the two of you who are still watching this, and for me, because my deadline is coming up. So with that said, I'll see you in the next one, and onwards and upwards, my friends.